Now, our senior parliamentary reporter, Patrick Amimo, is at President Uhuru Kenyatta, or rather, President Uhuru Kenyatta will address a joint meeting of the 12th Parliament. Amimo, it is going to be a historical address according to Jubilee and an infamous one according to NASA, isn't it?
Thank you, Gitonga. What is happening is that today will be the official opening of these 12th Parliament, where the President is expected to address these particular members of both houses, that is the Senate and National Assembly. But it's a meeting that has generated controversy from the opposition National Super Alliance, who are opposed to President Uhuru Kenyatta addressing the session, given that he's enjoying the powers of the incumbency. They say that he has no powers to address Parliament because because he's still waiting for a fresh presidential election, which was ordered for October 17th by the Supreme Court after it invalidated his win in the August 8th polls. So it's something that we'll be waiting to see how it will move on. But it's instructive to note that Parliament, the first sitting of the 12th Parliament, was convened on the 30th of August, which was almost 12 days ago, when members of the newly elected Parliament gathered here at the grounds of Parliament to be sworn in and also elect the speakers and deputy speakers, because according to the standing orders and the Constitution, the office of the Speaker becomes vacant once the first Parliament sits, and this first sitting was on 30th August. That's when now these members of Parliament in the National Assembly had to elect their Speaker, which position was taken by Justin Muturi, will be deputized by Moses Cheboy, who is the Kuresoi North Member of Parliament. In the Senate, we saw senators elect former Bungoma Governor Kenneth Lusaka to be the Speaker. He trounced the former Speaker Ekwe Ethuro. And the deputy position in the Senate is yet to be held, because we had, at that time, we had three individuals who had expressed interest, all allied to Jubilee. We had Irungu Kangata, who is the senator for Muranga. We had Susan Kihika, who was the senator for Nakuru County. And we also had Kimani Wamatangi, who is the senator for Kiambu. But when they met at State House prior to the elections, they were prevailed upon by the Jubilee Party leadership to cede that ambition to be deputy speakers, but instead let that position be taken by Tharaka Nithi Senator Kindiki Kithure. But that position then we saw as Susan Kihika appointed to be the chief whip in the Senate, and Kangata was given that position to deputize her in that capacity. So in the Senate, they could not elect the deputy speaker, and that position is vacant, and we'll be awaiting to see when the clerk to the Senate will be issuing notices to allow that nominations for that particular position for the deputy speaker, which we have word that Kindiki was eyeing that particular position in the Senate. So that is as matters stand, and we are waiting to see, because prior to this morning, Jubilee leadership, that's President Uhuru Kenyatta and his deputy, have asked Jubilee members of Parliament to convene at State House at around 9 in the morning. So we expect they'll be trooping to State House, maybe to also receive further instructions on how they'll be able to carry the business in the House. Gitonga.
All right, and maybe let's start with that meeting of Jubilee members and Jubilee Party at State House. Do we know what possibly the agenda for their meeting, especially given that the 12th Parliament sits this afternoon? What might be the agenda for their meeting this morning?
These particularly could be part of trying to whip up members to take up different the party positions. Remember, as I did indicate, we saw on the 30th August, prior to the first sitting of Parliament, we saw members who they met at State House, and they were whipped to support different party, specific party positions, especially when it came to the House leadership and also the choice of the Speaker. And we saw they did comply with those instructions that had been given to them at State House. So we expect that, given that it's a new House and majority of the members, almost 60%, are fresh members of Parliament, they are doing it for their first time. It is critical difficult for the Jubilee leadership to meet them and try to tell them what they expect in the House as they continue, they move on with the business of legislation, because Parliament basically with the current setup, Parliament is not at the behest of the presidency, because Parliament is now independent, the judiciary is independent, unlike those earlier days before the advent of the new constitution, when the president could could run the calendar of Parliament. This time round, Parliament Parliament sets its own agenda. That's why we saw, according to the constitution, after the August 8th elections, Parliament was to convene within 30 days. That particular date was to end on September 7th, but which was brought earlier by on 30th August for the Parliament to sit. So as we speak, Parliament is on board. It's already taken off and with its calendar, and they are going to run the program, because Parliament basically is to legislate, and the executive is to Parliament basically, its role is to legislate, and there are many pending matters before Parliament, which we expect the House to pick and start moving on. Definitely, from the previous 11th Parliament, there were certain critical bills that were never passed. We had the controversial gender parity bill, which several attempts, at least 6 attempts to pass it in 2015 and 2016, it flopped. But it's something that the Constitution expects members of Parliament to ensure that it passes, so that not more than 2/3 of either elective or appointed positions are enjoyed by a certain gender. So this is a matter that we'll see how the 12th Parliament will navigate it, because in the previous 11th Parliament, it came and it was so heated and emotive, and somehow proposing that it should be a progressive realization of the gender parity rule and not to be imposed on Kenyans. So a formula on how we'll achieve that gender parity is still something that is members of Parliament will be cracking their heads, scratching their heads to see how they meet that particular threshold as provided for in the Constitution. There are other also pending legislations with regard to the petroleum industry. Now that Kenya has, we discovered oil in Turkana, that particular oil has yet to be exploited. Kenyans are yet to see the benefits of that particular oil. There is also still a controversy on how the resources should be shared, whether communities should get 10% or 5%. It's a controversial area that we also expect the 12th Parliament to go through it and deliberate it on it, and see how mineral resources can be shared vis-a-vis between county governments and also the national government. So there are pending matters in Parliament, where we expect legislators will rise to the occasion and ensure that they conduct their business with decorum and a manner that befits their title as honorable members. Gitonga.
All right, Patrick, before we let you go now, we do know that NASA has threatened to boycott this particular sitting, and the argument is that Uhuru Kenyatta is a caretaker president and possibly should wait until the re-elections rather, are held on the 17th of October. What is likely to be the impact of their boycotting this particular sitting? And secondly, why can't Uhuru Kenyatta wait until the 17th and possibly convene this sitting? Why is it important to have it now?
As I did indicate, it's something that has raised controversy between the opposition and the Jubilee side, because, as it were, the president is enjoying the powers of incumbency under Article 134 of our Constitution, which states that he cannot address Parliament as a fully elected president for this particular 12th Parliament, because we are still having an election pending for October 17th after the election was nullified. But then, given that he's a sitting president with those powers, Parliament has invited him to come and address them for the official opening as a gesture of honor, because he's the sitting president. I think when he appears before the House, he'll not be pushing the Jubilee agenda until Kenyans give him that mandate to be the the declared president for the 2017 election. But then, as he appears there as a sitting president, I think what he'll have to converse with members of parliament is to bring to the attention of the importance of parliament as a legislative arm, because as I did indicate, parliament is now an independent institution, not controlled by the presidency or the executive. So when he appears before the parliament, I expect him to tackle things that touch on national legislation and ask legislators to ensure that they bring on board policies and laws that will ensure there is a good business environment, there is a good areas to do with security, education sector. We'll have laws that can govern the education sector. We also have laws that will see that the transport sector is in place. There are also challenges to do with the unemployment, because 40% of the Kenyans are unemployed, and this is something that I expect the president, when he appears before the House, maybe he'll try to tell legislators on how they can come up with laws that will ensure that at least the 40% of Kenyans who are unemployed, and especially majority who are youth, catering for 70% of that block, are given opportunity. There are enabling laws for them either to access soft loans and or other opportunities, maybe to open up areas for industrialization, because as it is, we saw some companies, factories collapse, and there should be ways of ensuring that these particular industries are revived to create the job opportunities. We also have cases with rising inflation. It's something that I expect the president to tell lawmakers on how they'll come up with maybe laws and taxation measures to ensure that inflation is curbed, and the rising food prices. Because even prior to the election, we had basic foodstuffs, their price shoot up. We saw there was a time when the price of maize flour went up to almost 145 before the government intervened with subsidized maize, which now made that stock to be retailed at 90 shillings. But then those stocks are about to be exhausted, and Kenyans are very anxious to see whether the food prices will shoot up after that subsidy is done. It's a balancing act, because in the North Rift we are expecting farmers in North Rift to harvest their maize, and if anything, yesterday we saw our colleague in Eldoret, Elvis Kosgei, talk to some individuals in Eldoret. They did indicate that they want to see the price of maize, 90 kilogram price, to remain at 4,500 shillings. But the government last year, we saw it wanted to buy their maize at 2,800 shillings, which matter. So most of these farmers are not very, very enthusiastic about that. So these are some of those national matters. Those are the ones that I expect maybe the president to address, to tell lawmakers to ensure that they put in place necessary laws that will ensure that Kenya achieves its dream of development and security, and also that it becomes a newly industrialized country, as is being dreamed of in our vision 2030. Gitonga.
All right.